بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد والشاهدين لما خفي عنهم وبرحمتك أغفيت وبفضلك سترت وأن توفر حظي من كل خير أنزلت أو إحسان فضلت أو بر نشرت أو رزق بسطت أو ذنب تغفره أو خطأ تستره. يا ربي يا ربي يا رب يا إلهي وسيدي ومولاي ومالك رقي يا من بيده ناصيتي يا عليما بذري ومسكنتي يا خبيرا بفقري وفاقتي يا ربي يا ربي يا رب أسألك بحقك وقدسك وعظم صفاتك وأسمائك أن تجعل أوقاتي من الليل والنهار بذكرك معمورا وبخدمتك موصولا وأعمالي عندك مقبولا حتى تكون أعمالي وأورادي حتى تكون أعمالي وإرادتي كلها وردا واحدا وحالي في خدمتك سرمدا. يا سيدي يا من عليه مؤولي يا من إليه شكوت أهوالي يا ربي يا ربي يا رب قوي على خدمتك جوارحي واشدد على العزيمة جوانحي وهب لي الجد في خشيتك والدوام في الاتصال بخدمتك حتى أسرها إليك في ميادين السابقين وأسرها إليك في البارزين وأشتاق إلى قربك في المشتاقين وأدنو منك دنو المخلصين وأخافك مخافة الموقنين وأجتمع في جوارك مع المؤمنين. اللهم ومن أرادني بسوء فارد ومن كادني فكد واجعلني من أحسن عبيدك نصيبا عندك وأكرمهم منزلة من وأخصهم زلفة لديك وإنه لا ينال ذلك إلا بفضلك وجد لي بجودك وعطف علي بمجدك واحفظني برحمتك واجعل لساني بذكرك لهجا وقلبي بحبك متيما ومن علي بحسن إجابتك وأقلني أثرتي واغفر زلتي وإنك قضيت على عبادك بعبادتك وأمرتهم بدعائك وزمنت لهم الإجابة فإليك يا ربي نسبت وجهي وإليك يا ربي مددت يدي وبعزتك استجب لي دعائي وبلغني مناي ولا تقطع من فضلك رجائي واكفني شر الجن والإنس من أعدائي يا سريع الرضا اغفر لمن لا يملك إلا الدعاء وإنك فعال لما تشاء يا من اسمه دواء وذكره شفاء وطاعته غنى ارحم من رأس ماله الرجاء وسلاح البكاء يا سابغ النعم يا دافع النقام يا نور المستوحشين في الظلام يا عالما لا يعلم صل على محمد وآل محمد وافعل بما أنت أهله وصلى الله على رسوله والأئمة الميامين من آله وسلم تسليما كثيرا كثيرا اللهم صل على محمد وآله سورة المباركة الفاتحة
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Brothers and sisters, Assalamu alaikum. It's a deep sorrow that we announce the sad demise of Marhuma Dilshad Bai Abbas Maulidina, who passed away today, November 21st, and she was also buried today. Marhuma was the wife of the late of Marhum Abbas Maulidina and daughter of Pyar Ali Salim Alhu. We kindly request, she passed away in Toronto and she was buried in Toronto as well. She used to live here in Vancouver as well, fondly remembered by the seniors as well. And we'd like to offer our condolences to all the family, Brother Muhammad Pardhan, Brother Pyar Ali Panju, Brother Turab Maulidina, Brother Riaz Pardhan, Sister Zahreen and Fatima and Sister Fatima Pardhan, and Sister Sukaina Maulidina. If I can ask everyone to please recite Surah Fatiha for the Marhuma and all the Marhumeens. Al-Fatiha.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. ياسين والقرآن الحكيم إنك لمن المرسلين على صراط مستقيم تنزيل العزيز الرحيم لتنذر قوما ما أنذر آباؤهم فهم غافلون لقد حق القول على أكثرهم فهم لا يؤمنون إنا جعلنا في أعناقهم أغلالا فهي إلى الأذقان فهم مقمحون وجعلنا من بين أيديهم سدا ومن خلفهم سدا فأغشيناهم فهم لا يبصرون وسواء عليهم أأنذرتهم أم لم تنذرهم لا يؤمنون إنما تنذر من اتبع الذكر وخشي الرحمن بالغيب فبشره بمغفرة وأجر كريم إنا نحن نحيي الموتى ونكتب ما قدموا وآثارهم وكل شيء أحصيناه في إمام مبين واضرب لهم مثلا أصحاب القرية إذ جاءها المرسلون إذ أرسلنا إليهم اثنين فكذبوهما فعززنا بثالث فقالوا إنا إليكم مرسلون قالوا ما أنتم إلا بشر مثلنا وما أنزل الرحمن من شيء إن أنتم إلا تكذبون قالوا ربنا يعلم إنا إليكم لمرسلون وما علينا إلا البلاغ المبين قالوا إنا تطيرنا بكم لئن لم تنتهوا لنرجمنكم وليمسنكم منا عذاب أليم قالوا طائركم معكم أئن ذكرتم بل أنتم قوم مسرفون وجاء من أقصى المدينة رجل يسعى قال يا قوم اتبعوا المرسلين اتبعوا من لا يسألكم أجرا وهم مهتدون وما لي لا أعبد الذي فطرني وإليه ترجعون أأتخذ من دونه آلهة إن يردني الرحمن بضر لا تغن عني شفاعتهم شيئا ولا ينقذون إني إذا لفي ضلال مبين إني آمنت بربكم فاسمعون قيل ادخل الجنة قال يا ليت قومي يعلمون بما غفر لي ربي وجعلني من المكرمين وما أنزلنا على قومه من بعده من جند من السماء وما كنا منزلين إن كانت إلا صيحة واحدة فإذا هم خامدون يا حسرة على العباد ما يأتيهم من رسول إلا كانوا به يستهزئون ألم يروا كم أهلكنا قبلهم من القرون أنهم إليهم لا يرجعون وإن كل لما جميع لدينا محضرون وآية لهم الأرض الميتة أحييناها وأخرجنا منها حبا فمنه يأكلون وجعلنا فيها جنات من نخيل وأعناب وفجرنا فيها من العيون ليأكلوا من ثمره وما عملت أيديهم أفلا يشكرون سبحان الذي خلق الأزواج كلها مما تنبت الأرض ومن أنفسهم ومما لا يعلمون وآية لهم الليل نسلخ منه النهار فإذا هم مظلمون والشمس تجري لمستقر لها ذلك تقدير العزيز العليم والقمر قدرناه منازل حتى عاد كالعرجون القديم لا الشمس ينبغي لها أن تدرك القمر ولا الليل سابق النهار وكل في فلك يسبحون وآية لهم أنا حملنا ذريتهم في الفلك المشحون وخلقنا لهم من مثله وما يركبون وإن نشأ نغرقهم فلا صريخ لهم ولا هم ينقذون إلا رحمة منا ومتاعا إلى حين وإذا قيل لهم اتقوا ما بين أيديكم وما خلفكم لعلكم ترحمون وما يأتيهم من آية من آيات ربهم إلا كانوا عنها معرضين وإذا قيل لهم أنفقوا مما مما رزقكم الله قال الذين كفروا للذين آمنوا أنطعم من لو يشاء الله أطعمه إن أنتم إلا في ضلال مبين ويقولون متى هذا الوعد إن كنتم صادقين ما ينظرون إلا صيحة واحدة تأخذهم وهم يخصمون فلا يستطيعون توصية ولا إلى أهلهم يرجعون ونفخ في الصور فإذا هم من الأجداث إلى ربهم ينسلون قالوا يا ويلنا من بعثنا من مرقدنا هذا ما وعد الرحمن وصدق المرسلون إن كانت إلا صيحة واحدة فإذا هم جميع لدينا محضرون فاليوم لا تظلم نفس شيئا ولا تجزون إلا ما كنتم تعملون إن أصحاب الجنة اليوم في شغل فاكهون هم وأزواجهم في ظلال على الأرائك متكئون لهم فيها فاكهة ولهم ما يدعون سلام قولا من رب رحيم وامتازوا اليوم أيها المجرمون ألم أعهد إليكم يا بني آدم ألا تعبدوا الشيطان إنه لكم عدو مبين وأن اعبدوني هذا صراط مستقيم ولقد أضل منكم جبلا كثيرا أفلم تكونوا تعقلون هذه جهنم التي كنتم توعدون اصلوها اليوم بما كنتم تكفرون اليوم نختم على أفواههم وتكلمنا أيديهم وتشهد أرجلهم بما كانوا يكسبون ولو نشاء لطمسنا على أعينهم فاستبقوا الصراط فأنى يبصرون ولو نشاء لمسخناهم على مكانتهم فما استطاعوا مضيا ولا يرجعون ومن نعمره ننكسه في الخلق أفلا يعقلون وما علمناه الشعر وما ينبغي له إن هو إلا ذكر وقرآن مبين لينذر من كان حيا ويحق القول على الكافرين أولم يروا أنا خلقنا لهم مما عملت أيدينا أنعاما فهم لها مالكون وذللناها لهم فمنها ركوبهم ومنها يأكلون ولهم فيها منافع ومشارب أفلا يشكرون واتخذوا من دون الله آلهة لعلكم ينصرون لا يستطيعون نصرهم وهم لهم جند محضرون فلا يحزنك قولهم إنا نعلم ما يسرون وما يعلنون أولم ير الإنسان أنا خلقناه من نطفة فإذا هو خصيم مبين وضرب لنا مثلا ونسي خلقه قال من يحيي العظام وهي رميم قل يحييها الذي أنشأها أول مرة وهو بكل خلق عليم الذي جعل لكم من الشجر الأخضر نارا فإذا أنتم منه توقدون أوليس الذي خلق السماوات والأرض بقادر على أن يخلق مثلهم بلى وهو الخلاق العليم إنما أمره إذا أراد شيئا أن يقول له كن فيكون فسبحان الذي بيده ملكوت كل شيء وإليه ترجعون صدق الله العلي العظيم صلوات.
Brothers and sisters, inshallah, we'll bring the partition so the ladies can join us for this interactive session that we will have in a few minutes. Before that, there is an announcement by the Youth Committee. Sister Naba, whenever you're ready, please go ahead.
In the name of Allah, the Beneficent, the Merciful. I am pleased to announce that Alhamdulillah, I will be returning as the President of the Az-Zahraa Youth Committee for the 2024 to 2026 term. Alongside myself, I am honored to have Sister Hadia Balu and Brother Mahdi Walji as Vice Presidents, and together we will be leading the team. Joining us, we have a fully stacked team of brand new members to the Az-Zahraa Youth Committee. Our female general members being Sister Asia Daya, Sister Saleha Remtullah, and Sister Mahdia Rashid. And our male general members being Brother Kashif Ali Jafar, Brother Ali Saheb Nagash, and Brother Sayyid Abdi. Finally, we also have our junior members, Sister Samana Natu and Brother Hadi Datu. With renewed energy and a deep commitment to serving the Az-Zahraa community, our team is focused on empowering the next leaders and the next generations of the future. The input and ideas of the youth are invaluable to us, and we are excited to turn your visions into a reality. We encourage all We encourage all to reach out to any of us with any ideas or thoughts on what you think our community needs. We are excited to show you guys what we have in store for you guys for the coming years, inshallah. Salawat.
Thank you very much, Sister Naba, and good luck to the new elected to the youth committee and also the returning ones. Inshallah, we'll now start the program. I would like to invite Brother Eliza Ladak and Mohammed Hussein Megji to come in front. I'm not sure if Akbranko is here or not. Salwat. And ladies can come now. We have installed the partition. Thank you. Sorry, brothers and sisters. I was too excited about the session. I forgot about Ziyarat-e-Warisa. Inshallah, we'll have Ziyarat-e-Warisa now. If I can ask everyone to please stand up for Ziyarat-e-Warisa. Salawat.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alayka ya warisa Adama safwatillah. Assalamu alayka ya warisa Nuhin nabiyillah. Assalamu alayka ya warisa Ibrahim khalilillah. Assalamu alayka ya warisa Musa kalimillah. Assalamu alayka ya warisa Isa ruhillah. Assalamu alayka ya warisa Muhammadin habibillah. Assalamu alayka ya warisa Amiril mu'minin alayhi salam waliyillah. Assalamu alayka ya ibn Muhammadin al-Mustafa. Assalamu alayka ya ibn Aliyin al-Murtaza. Assalamu alayka ya ibn Fatimah Az-Zahraa. Assalamu alayka ya ibn Khadijat al-Kubra. Assalamu alayka ya Sarallahi wa ibn Sari wal witr al-mawtur. Ashhadu annaka qad aqamta as-salat wa atayta az-zakat wa amarta bil ma'ruf wa nahayta anil munkar wa ata'ta Allah wa rasulahu hatta ataqal yaqin. فلعن الله أمة قتلتك ولعن الله أمة ظلمتك ولعن الله أمة سمعت بذلك فرضيت به. يا مولاي يا أبا عبد الله أشهد أنك كنت نورا في الأصلاب الشامخة والأرحام المطهرة لم تنجسك الجاهلية بأنجاسها ولم تلبسك من متلهمات ثيابها. وأشهد أنك من دائم الدين وأركان المؤمنين. وأشهد أنك الإمام البر التقي الرزي الزكي الهادي المهدي. وأشهد أن الأئمة من ولدك كلمة التقوى وأعلام الهدى والعروة الوثقى والحجة على أهل الدنيا. وأشهد الله وملائكته وأنبياءه ورسله أني بكم مؤمن وبيا بكم موقن بشرع ديني وخواتيم عملي وقلبي لقلبكم سلم وأمري لأمركم متبع. صلوات الله عليكم وعلى أرواحكم وعلى أجسادكم وعلى أجسامكم وعلى شاهدكم وعلى غائبكم وعلى ظاهركم وعلى باطنكم. السلام عليك يا ابن رسول الله. السلام عليك يا ابن نبي الله. السلام عليك يا ابن أمير المؤمنين. السلام عليك يا ابن الحسين الشهيد. السلام عليك أيها الشهيد. السلام عليك أيها المظلوم وابن المظلوم. لعن الله أمة قتلتك ولعن الله أمة ظلمتك ولعن الله أمة سميت بذلك فرزيت به. السلام عليكم يا أولياء الله وأحباء. السلام عليكم يا أصفياء الله وأوداء. السلام عليكم يا أنصار دين الله. السلام عليكم يا أنصار رسول الله. السلام عليكم يا أنصار أمير المؤمنين. السلام عليكم يا أنصار فاطمة سيدتي نساء العالمين. السلام عليكم يا أنصار أبي محمد الحسن بن علي الولي الناصح الأمين. السلام عليكم يا أنصار أبي عبد الله بأبي أنتم وأمي طبتم وطابت الأرض التي فيها دفنتم وفزتم فوزا عظيما. فيا ليتني كنت معكم فأفوز معكم. السلام عليك يا أبا الفضل العباس ابن أمير المؤمنين. السلام عليك يا ابن سيد الوصيين. السلام عليك يا ابن أول القوم إسلاما وأقدمهم إيمانا وأقومهم بدين الله وأحوتهم على الإسلام. أشهد لقد نصحت لله ولرسوله ولأخيك فنعم الأخ المواسي. فلعن الله أمة قتلتك ولعن الله أمة ظلمتك ولعن الله أمة استخلت منك المحارم وانتهكت حرمة الإسلام. ونعم الصابر المجاهد المحامي الناصر ولك الدافع عن أخيه المجيب إلى طاعة ربه الراغب فيما زهد فيه غيره من الثواب الجزيل والثناء الجميل. ولحقك الله بدرجة آبائك في جنات النعيم. السلام عليكم كل أهل بيت النبوة جميعا ورحمة الله وبركاته. صلوات.
Brothers and sisters, before we begin, you are all requested to recite Surah Fatiha for Mahum Muhammad Raza Abdullah Ladak. Al-Fatiha. A'udhu billahi minash shaitani rajim. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. My respected scholars, brothers and sisters in Islam, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Currently, millions of people in Canada have pre-diabetes or diabetes. Right now, this chronic condition affects about 11.7 million people across the country, and the numbers continue to climb each day, with one person being diagnosed every 3 minutes. Furthermore, benefit claims data reveal that more children and young people under the age of 34 are being diagnosed for diabetes, and they are expected to increase by 26% over the next 10 years. With so many people being impacted by this chronic condition, more and more treatment options are being researched and made available to help curb this impact. One of the approved drugs to help with diabetes is known as Ozempic. This drug has also shown to contribute to weight loss, and across social media, celebrities and influencers have widely promoted this drug as an approach to weight management. The publicity has created curiosity about the medication for people hoping to address their own weight concerns, especially interest from people who don't have diabetes, as this drug has proven to contribute to a loss of between 6 and 11% of body weight after only 3 to 6 months of use. In fact, in Canada, it is already the drug that is spent the most in Canada. With such notable results, some medical professionals have been prescribing Ozempic off-label, meaning for the purposes not officially approved by Health Canada, to patients who are experiencing or who are at risk for weight-related health conditions, such as high blood pressure. And thanks to pop culture endorsements, media reports, find that doctors are noticing a growing number of requests for this drug from patients who actually do not have diabetes or even weight-related health concerns. In fact, members of our own community are asking more and more about this magic pill. There is no doubt that managing our weight helps our overall health and well-being, especially when it comes to heart disease, stroke, sleep apnea, certain types of cancers, and kidney disease. However, it's important that we all get well educated and understand the science when it comes to drugs that we want to enter into our bodies. This body is an amanat from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and we must take care of it. But as Muslims, we need to fully understand the impact of taking these types of drugs, both from a medicinal standpoint as well as an Islamic perspective. So, our program for tonight will be structured as follows. We will begin our discussion by understanding how Ozempic actually works, who is Ozempic specifically meant for, the pros and cons of taking this drug, and who should take this drug. To help with this discussion, we have invited Brother Ali Raza Ladak, who is the Assistant Director of Pharmaceutical Studies and the Assistant Professor of Teaching at the University of British Columbia. Once we fully understand how this drug works, we must understand it from a jurisprudential perspective and understanding the true philosophy and understanding of what Islam says. For example, we may not need to take Ozempic due to medical related reasons, but simply because we want to look better. What does Islam say about these types of treatment offerings, especially when it comes to the beautification industry? What about Botox, liposuction, lip injections, fake eyelashes, etc., etc., all meant for us to look better? To help us navigate this discussion, we'll be stuck with Dr. Akbar Mitani. So let's not waste any more time. Please help me in welcoming Brother Ali Raza with your loudest of salawats.
Assalamu alaikum, my brothers and sisters in Islam. Okay, so the first thing I wanted to go over is kind of which are the medications we're talking about. So as my brother mentioned, Ozempic is the commonly known name, but I want to mention some of the other names as well, because you may know someone who's taking it, you may have heard some other names. So there's Victoza, there's Saxenda, there's Wegovy, there's Mounjaro, there's Zepbound, there's Trulicity as well. And so what these names are, these are all brand names of the medication. And so there's different brand names when a medication is marketed for diabetes, for example. And there's a different brand name when it then becomes approved, for example, a different condition. In this case, it would be obesity. And so there's many different brand names. Now, the active ingredient or the generic names are semaglutide, liraglutide, tirzepatide, and dulaglutide. And so you can even hear from these active ingredients and these medicinal names that they're all very similar in the way that the name ends. And that's because they all belong to a similar class of medication. So that's the second thing I want to explain. How do these medications work in your body? And I think the easiest way to do it is to first talk a little bit about diabetes, which will be beneficial. So when we eat food, namely carbs, and it goes into the body, our body's response is to produce insulin. And the organ that produces insulin is called the pancreas, and it's right behind the stomach. Now, insulin is a hormone that your body needs in order to utilize the nutrients that you're eating. So you'll eat some food, then the insulin levels will go up, and your body will then respond by taking the sugar, so carbs are broken down into sugar or glucose in the body, and it'll take that sugar from the bloodstream, and it's then allowed to go into cells, and the insulin allows the body to use this sugar as energy. And so insulin serves a really, really important role. Now, in type 1 diabetes, our body actually attacks the pancreas, and thus it's unable to produce the insulin. And for that reason, those with type 1 diabetes need to be injected, they need to take insulin injections because their body cannot produce it anymore. In type 2 diabetes, which usually comes later in life as opposed to type 1 diabetes, which comes often in adolescence. And type 2 diabetes is the type of diabetes that's associated with being overweight oftentimes. In type 2 diabetes, the body becomes resistant to the effects of insulin. So your body is producing insulin, but it's not working as well. And then your body tries to compensate by producing more insulin. And eventually it can't keep up either. And so what ends up happening is that our body isn't able to utilize the sugar that's now in our bloodstream after it gets absorbed. And that sugar that's in our bloodstream, which we can call, blood sugar, can cause some damaging effects if the body doesn't use it, right? And that's why we're worried about heart disease. We're worried about damage to our nerves, our kidneys, our eyes, and even our extremities when someone has diabetes, okay? Now, as I mentioned, when you eat some food, your pancreas produces insulin. But there's a messenger in your body that tells your pancreas to make this insulin and to release this insulin. And that's called GLP-1 or glucagon-like peptide 1. It's one of the substances that do that. And so this is where we come back to our medications. these medications, Ozempic or Mounjaro, which are the two common ones, are mimicking that hormone that increases the release of that insulin. So when it does that, by mimicking that hormone that's naturally produced by your body, it's increasing the effects, and the effects are increasing the amount of insulin. It's also slowing down gastric emptying, which is how quickly the stomach is moving food along in the body. And it's also increasing the feeling of fullness. And so from these three effects, you can see how the medication was originally meant for diabetes. And these 4 medications that I'm talking about, they're not very old, in fact. The first one, Victoza, was approved only in 2010. And then Ozempic 2017 and Mounjaro 2022. And once they started using them for diabetes, they found there's good evidence. They're very good drugs for diabetes. They help a lot of patients get their type 2 diabetes in control. And there's even some benefits for the heart and for mortality, which means decreasing the chance of death. And so the medications were very good. But one of the side effects they noticed with these medications is that it does cause a significant amount of weight loss. And so once the pharmaceutical companies discovered that it was causing that effect, they then sought approval for these medications for obesity or being overweight. And now 3 of these medications in the United States and 2 of them in Canada at the moment are approved for obesity. And the way that that's kind of measured is you look at body fat, and the best, or the tool that we use is looking at BMI, which is your weight divided by your height squared. And if you have, you can kind of calculate that. It's not a number that tells you everything about your body, but it is an indicator that we use as a rough estimate. And so if the BMI is over 30, or if you have a BMI over 27, but you have some other conditions like diabetes or high blood pressure that put you at risk for some of these heart and health issues, then these medications could be prescribed. Now, for these reasons, the studies show that they were actually very effective. And so the studies that I looked at, for example, for Ozempic, in a trial specific to obesity, it caused a weight loss of 15 to 16% of body weight. And those were predominantly in white adults, but even in Asian adults, 9 to 13% of their body weight. And then if you go to Mounjaro, it's even more dramatic, and it can cause a 15 to 21% decrease in weight. Now, a couple of things I want to mention there before everyone gets excited and asks Asif Bhai for samples, is that one, you have to look at the patient population that is being studied in these trials, right? And so the patients in these trials are patients who have diabetes or have obesity, and that means they have a lot of excess weight. You also have to look at whether the patients in these populations reflect yourself, right? And so for us, being a very specific ethnicity, you would have to see, like, is this actually proven to be something that would be effective for a patient population that reflects you? And in our case, in a lot of Western medicine, medications are often explored in white patients or in patients who are, for example, healthy. They may be younger than us. They may not have the same medical conditions that we do. And so that's something for us to pay very particular attention to. Now, these weight loss effects were shown at about a year's time. So it took a year for those effects to be shown. And as I said in the beginning, these medications are very new. So we don't have much long-term data in terms of what happens after these medications are discontinued. Now, one of the other things that I want to point out is that when we talked about the way that this medication works, how am I doing for time? When we talked about how this medication works, we said that it promotes fullness, right? It tells your brain that you're full, and it also slows down the movement of food through your stomach. And so you have that sensation of fullness as well. And so that actually, if you think about it, will contribute to the side effects of these medications. One of the biggest side effects is related to just feeling nauseous, feeling constipated, and having kind of a lot of stomach issues. The other thing that really stands out to me is that when these medications are used for diabetes, they start at kind of low doses, and they can go a little bit up based on how much you need to control your diabetes. But when they were approved for obesity, they really increased the doses a lot. Now, because of the side effects, they go very slowly oftentimes, so they'll start on a low dose and then they increase the dose. But the side effects, or the effectiveness and the side effects are very much dose related, but the side effects do subside at some time, or after some time. But the thing that stands out again is that this is not being studied in patients who are regular weight, they don't have any risk factors, and they're just looking for something to kind of help lose those extra pounds. Oftentimes, and the studies that were done for obesity, these medications are also being coupled with eating in a caloric deficit, so eating less than you're oftentimes eating as part of your regular diet, so controlling your diet, and you're also adding exercise on top of that, right? So these patients were going through a whole intervention that accounted for both physical and nutritional therapy in addition to using the Ozempic or Mounjaro. Okay, I think that's everything I wanted to share. Was there anything you wanted me to add to that?
Any questions specifically related to the science of Ozempic? I will add a few things. Just out of curiosity, with a show of hands, who has extended health benefits? Show of hands. Okay, so about 60 to 70% of everyone who's here has that. Thanks. So there are a few things you need to know if you think you need to take this and your doctor prescribes it for you. Let's say you have diabetes. So Ozempic is approved by Health Canada for diabetes only. And so if you have extended health coverage and your doctor prescribes you Ozempic, you will have to fill out an extra form. So that form is called a prior authorization form that your doctor will complete. And the doctor needs to sign off that you actually do have diabetes and that you've tried other forms of medication before you're going to try Ozempic. So an example is like metformin. Not every carrier might have that, but one carrier or two carriers, for example, they want to see that you've tried metformin first before you try Ozempic. Why? Because metformin is a lot cheaper than Ozempic. So Ozempic costs an average of $3,000 a year, which considering is not that much when you look at other biological drugs, but it's already the number one drug in Canada in terms of the amount of dollars we're spending. Well, already number one in Canada. So that tells you how many people are taking it, even at that $3,000 figure. So that's number one. Number two is, as Brother Alireza mentioned, there are other drugs that are classified, which are actually the same drug, but for weight loss. So Wegovy is the same drug as Ozempic, but its classification is weight loss. So you will be covered through your extended health benefits for Wegovy if you have weight loss as part of your plan design. So you need to have that as part of your plan design, and then if you get prescribed, you can take it. Having said that, most carriers haven't approved Wegovy on their list of drugs that you can take. So even though your doctor may prescribe it for you, you actually may not get coverage if you have extended health coverage. So those are a couple of things to kind of keep in mind if you're looking at taking either one of these drugs after you've discussed that with your physician. Any questions on how those drugs work with your extended health benefits?
I have a question for Ali Raza.
Sure.
Ali Raza, can this drug be taken with other biologic injections, like Dupixent or any other, like cyclosporin or methotrexate and stuff like that? Or does it cause a problem going later on in life?
Causing a problem later on in life, I haven't read of any drug interactions that are kind of long-term drug interactions, but before taking the medication, we'd want to check the specifics of those medications with this one. I'm not sure, if I'm being honest. We can look at those in the drug monograph. Every medication itself is going to have unique drug interactions. But that's something we can look into if you're interested.
So a drug like Ozempic, which is taken for people, say for the diabetes, right?
Mm-hmm.
Let's say somebody takes it for a while, and then they stop it, for example. Does the weight gain come back, number one? And later on in life, can it get worse?
I'm curious what your answer is, then I'll answer mine. Yeah.
And
your
it comes
answer?
back quickly.
And not only does it come back, but it comes back quite quickly, and it has some serious effects when it comes back quickly, because its rate of coming back is quite significant. We can talk a little bit about those people who actually have a normal body weight, and when they take this drug, it actually has a different effect than those who are truly obese and they're taking this drug. Sorry.
No, that's great. I was just going to say that, like, as I said, because they're so recent, there is a very big lack of long-term data on the studies that are published. That being said, the ones that I did see showed what Akbar Uncle mentioned, where there is pretty much a rapid regain of that body weight. And that's because your body kind of also gets used to the what it was having before, right? So if you're decreasing your appetite and you're increasing the sense of fullness and you're then eating less, and then you stop that medication, well, then your body is going to adjust to that, right? And then automatically, then you would start, like, unless you were very, very, regimented and very careful, you would experience that weight gain again. The other thing with that is that when you lose this weight, when you lose the weight, you're not necessarily only losing body fat. You're also losing some of your lean muscle, right? So it's about 25 to 35% of the weight that you would lose would be muscle. Now that can be mitigated by adding some resistance training, so like lifting some weights and increasing your protein intake. But the point would be that is, like, you kind of have to be careful when you're going through that, or if you're taking the medication for weight loss specifically.
Do you have a mic, Shamama?
When you say weight loss, it also affects the organs, because I know of somebody personally who lost so much so fast that the kidneys were kind of all over the place because there wasn't any fat or muscle supporting it. Is that true?
There's no evidence of that. Okay, so let me back up. So the thing is that if you're taking this medication and then you're starving yourself at the same time, you're going to have a problem, right? And so that usually goes hand in hand. But if you are having enough fluids, you have enough diet, then it won't affect your organs in the way you describe it. In fact, one of the biggest advantages of Ozempic, and we'll talk about this when we talk about the Islamic significance of this, actually one of the biggest pros of Ozempic and drugs like that, semaglutide, duraglutide, and even Mounjaro and stuff, is the fact that it is shown to be cardioprotective and renal protective. So what does that mean? It means that the studies are extensive that show the benefit for heart protection and for kidney protection, right? So actually the kidney protection data was so strong that the studies that they were doing, they had to stop the study because the study meant that there is always a control group, right? You always compare a control group with a group that's taking the drug. It was unethical to continue the study because there was such a huge benefit in the protection of kidneys. So of itself, I don't think this drug has those organ effects that you mentioned of itself. But if that patient is then not at the same time taking enough fluids, not taking a good balanced diet, not taking protein, and so on and so forth, then the weight loss plus them not looking after, because some of these people really want to lose weight, and they want to lose weight real fast because they want to look good for a wedding, for example, right? If it's a bride who wants to look good for a wedding, or even a groom, right? So they may start to do this real fast, and that's really not the function of this drug. It can get you into trouble if you try and do that, plus starve yourself, plus, So it has, there is another group of medications that I don't know if Ali Raza mentioned, they're called SGPLT2 inhibitors, and they're like empagliflozin or Jardiance. Some people who are diabetics may be taking that. That also has about a 10% weight loss over 6 months, but it's certainly not as good as Ozempic.
Yeah, I was just going to agree with Akbar Uncle. The only other kind of big warnings that we have for Ozempic are thyroid cancer. If a patient had a history of thyroid cancer or any family history, we'd be careful there. And we'd also have to be careful. There's a chance there could be some pancreatitis, which is inflammation of the pancreas. I'm okay, thank you. So those are the only kind of two big warnings that we might have to watch out for, which happens in a very small subset of patients. But besides that, as I said, most of those side effects are, the nausea, constipation, diarrhea, they happen, and then the body gets used to it. And then they usually typically subside. But I think from what I read, about 1 in 10 patients can't tolerate these medications either. Also, I just want to make it clear, these medications, there's an oral form of one of them, but for the most part, they're injectables. So these are not medications you're taking orally. Yeah, once weekly. Yeah, once weekly injectable medications.
And I don't want you to get scared about the thyroid cancer. Because when you use the word cancer, people get all worked up about it. The studies on thyroid cancer actually are on lab rats. They are not in humans. And so the caution that Health Canada has given, as Ali Raza mentioned, is if you have a history of thyroid cancer, or if you have a family history of thyroid cancer, then you should be cautious and probably avoid that drug. So that's just...
So now that you've got your chai and your tabarruk, we'll try to end this rather quickly before everyone starts to leave. But many people are probably wondering, saying, okay, well, we're talking about Ozempic. That's great. But, how does that impact Islam and us being as Muslims? And the reason we wanted to use this is not only is it a fairly new drug, but the reasons why people are taking it is obviously for rapid weight loss. And what we're seeing is that the reason that they're taking it for the weight loss is because they want to look good. And looking good equals feeling good. So they also end up feeling better about themselves, which helps, in fact, their mental health as well. So that is another pro of Ozempic. But that drug specifically, when we're looking at the intention of us looking good and feeling good, then what about other treatments that do something similar? For example, lip injections. I'll feel good because I'll look better with the potential lip injection. Or then what about Botox? So you go from drugs that help you look better to then other treatments like a Botox or lip injections. Or hey, instead of taking this drug, why don't I just get surgery and get liposuction done and then get that, and that'll be a lot easier, and I'll look better, and then I will feel better. So the question then becomes, from an Islamic perspective, what are the Islamic views when it comes to treatments like this for the sole purpose of looking better? We all know Islam is a very fair and just religion. There is absolutely no question that if a doctor prescribes you Ozempic because you have diabetes or chronic obesity, there's absolutely no question you can take that drug. We don't need to get Akbar Uncle to chime in on that. Even me, I'll tell you, it's absolutely okay to take a drug for medical reasons. But what if you're taking a drug, or what if you're taking a treatment like tattooed eyebrows, right? And I know the men, they're feeling that we're just focusing on the females, but trust me, those issues of tattooing the eyebrows or liposuction, hair transplants going to Turkey, is impacting the male side as well. What about testosterone replacement therapy? Things like that are also impacting all of our community members in a wide variety. So it's important that we started the session by understanding the medical side, but now we need to shift our focus being as Muslims and fully understand what the Islamic perspective is. So I know there is technically no alim sitting here, but we have a mu'allim in Akbar Uncle who does recite majlis. Having said that, we have done our due diligence in speaking with a variety of different scholars on this topic. And so we wanted to share what the results of those discussions have been in the various case scenarios or case studies that we've discussed. So the first part, everyone wants to know. We don't need the long explanations. Just tell me, am I allowed to take it or am I not allowed to get Botox? Am I allowed to get a lip injection or am I not allowed to get a lip injection? So we don't need the long explanations. So jurisprudentially, Akbar Uncle, it's going to be a yes or a no question. Jurisprudentially, are we allowed to have these various treatments like a Botox, liposuction, or lip injections? Yes or no?
So since when has Islam been yes or no?
Today.
Can I just make some comments and then I'll give you a yes or a no?
See? Proper Molana right here.
I think it's important to understand the Islamic perspective. Unless you have the context and you understand the philosophy behind the Islam, then the yes or no will make sense. So whenever you're answering questions like this, there are different levels at which you answer. So the level that you're talking about is the bottom level, which is the lowest level of any Islamic issue that comes. The lowest level is you answer it from a jurisprudential perspective. Is it haram? Is it halal? Is it makruh? Is it mubah? Is it mustahab? This is the jurisprudential lens that you all have. That's the absolute basic level that is expected of you, right? But when you're looking at complex issues like this, whether it is Botox or body image or liposuction and things like that, you really have to raise yourself beyond just the jurisprudential level and look at this at a more ethical kind of level, a social ethical level, and a spiritual level. I think that that's very important. So coming back to your question, is it allowed? Under certain circumstances, it is allowed, but there are conditions to it.
So there are two key factors that someone needs to make sure that they understand getting these types of treatments that we've listed. So Akbar Uncle, what are the two critical factors that they need to keep in mind? From a jurisprudential standpoint.
Perspective, any procedure that you get done, any medication that you take, which is really based on not a medical reason, but a reason for beautification or changing your body image. The first question is it harmful? So can it potentially be harmful to you? And so if the risks of harm outweigh the benefits of something, then it is not permissible, right? So that's the first thing that you have to consider. The second thing that you have to consider, as you mentioned, is that if you're getting this procedure done, then it has to be done in an Islamic way. So if you are, for example, getting a significant body image changed, whether it is Botox, whether, breast implantation, there's different things that, are possible. If you're getting that done for the purpose of, changing your body image to look good, then it has to be performed by a mahram, like if it's a woman, it would have to be a woman, and if it's a man, it would have to be a man. Though jurists usually, feel that, this is very important in this area when you're looking at doing something that's not medically necessary, or it's not a life and limb kind of issue, but it is important for you. Now, there are physicians who will say, well, actually, it is medically necessary because it affects the mental health of the person, right? So there is a whole bunch of gray areas in this. It's not as simple as saying, is it allowed, is it not allowed? But these are the general kind of rules. And the third issue is that whatever procedure you are going to get done, you want to make sure that that procedure is not become a barrier for you to perform a wajibat. So
like wudu or ghusl.
Yeah, so if you get false eyelashes, and if it is obstructing wuzu or ghusl, then that is not permissible. Or I'm told that sometimes you can get some sort of a nail thing done, which is permanent, which is permanent, and then it would affect your ghusl or your wudu.
Or tattooed eyebrows is the most common one, but
So
that is allowed because it's under the skin. So
those are the things you have to be careful of. So those are, from a jurisprudential perspective, that's not. Amir bhai, you have a question?
So there's a big gray area that I just want to make sure that we caution everyone, because that is something that we, personally, we all need to make our own. So the comment is that God has made us a certain way, and we need to honor and respect that. And absolutely, God has made us each unique and have our own purpose on this earth, and therefore we should not alter that. And that is definitely one viewpoint that many people have, which is why some do consider the fact that if it's not medically necessary, why are you wanting to do it? But the gray area comes in the fact when we said that when we look better, we also feel better. And so there are certain people that may have, let's say, for example, they're obese. And when you are obese, it is the studies have shown that there is a higher risk of getting depressed, having anxiety, and having more stress in your life. And having obesity has its own challenges, like its health challenges. You have more high blood pressure, and that causes other impacts. But you also need to then say, okay, well, if I get liposuction done, could my mental health be better? Could I stand longer and perform salat? Maybe being obese is causing me that issue. So that is where the gray area comes in, and that we also need to take that into consideration. And I think that this is where we want the next about 10 minutes or so of the discussion to go, is what are those gray areas? And I will provide Akbar Uncle some scenarios which we get in terms of our questions that we receive. But I think, yeah, go ahead. You want to?
So, Amir Bhai, I think you said a couple of things. Your conclusion is not correct. Your approach is commendable, but your conclusion is not correct. So if your approach is that God made us the way we are, and we should not change our body image, and if we change our body image, it is haram, you cannot make that conclusion. That conclusion is not correct. Fiqh is very different. All right? There are rules in fiqh that logically you may think that it should be like this, but it's not. Right? If salat is the number one worship, right? And fasting is lesser than salat because it comes number two. But for a woman who is in menses, if they miss their salat, they don't have to repay it. But for their fasting, they have to repay it. So don't make the conclusion. Okay, state what you feel, which is important. It's important you state what you feel, but the conclusion may not be correct. Okay? The other thing is you have to understand, because I have so many scenarios I can give you. It is wajib for a woman to look beautiful for her husband to be attracted to her. And what if her body type has become such that her husband does not like her anymore, and is not attracted towards her? Is it not wajib on her to change her body type so that her husband becomes more? So there are so many different scenarios, so don't make the conclusion, is all I'm saying, okay? I think what is important to understand, I would rephrase what you're saying. In Islam, how does Islam define beauty? That's the most important question we have to ask. Islam does not define beauty externally, exoterically. It defines beauty internally. It defines beauty as your faith. It defines beauty as your connection with God. It defines beauty as connection with God. It defines beauty on your character and what your character is. That in Islam is beauty. There is actually a very nice hadith from Sheikh Suduq, I think it's Sheikh Suduq, where a man actually came to the Holy Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. And he comes to the Prophet and he says to the Prophet, he says, tell me, if I do not perform any of the mustahab acts, is that okay? And the Prophet kind of looked at him and he said, yeah, it's okay. You're not obliged to perform mustahab acts. You are obliged only to perform your wajib acts. And he said, in that case, I'm never going to do any mustahab acts. And the Prophet said to him, like, why are you doing that? Like, why are you saying that? And he said, because whenever I look at myself in the mirror, I'm really ugly. God has made me really ugly. And I don't like the fact that God has made me really ugly. Because God has made me really ugly, I'm not going to perform any mustahab acts. I'll do the wajib because I know if I don't do the wajib, I'm going to go to hell, right? I'll do the wajib, but I'm not going to do any of the mustahab acts. And so the Prophet, the Jibreel comes, it's a long story, but the bottom line is Jibreel comes and basically the Prophet says to him through Jibreel, where Allah is saying to this person that why are you focused on your external beauty? When if you were obedient to me, think about the gifts and rewards that I will give you in the hereafter for your obedience. Because for me, that is what beauty is, right? So it's very important to, so that's the way I would frame it. I would frame that Islamically, beauty is really more internal, your faith, your character, and so on and so forth, not external. But having said that, I don't think we should just brush under the carpet somebody who wants to genuinely change their body image. They want to look more beautiful for whatever reason. I think you have some specific cases that, that we can say it is not allowed. Botox injections, off and in itself, no problem, right? Ozempic, really, no problem.
And the gray area comes into, from an Islamic perspective, your intention, right? So it just boils down to that one word as to what is your intention when you're looking at getting any type of treatment or wanting to take any drugs, is the why. Why are you wanting to take it? Is it to look better? Okay. Is it to feel better? Is it for mental health related reasons? Why? And the answer to you will be very easy to come back to. But we do often get these questions. So we thought with the limited time that we have since Akbranko went into Majlis mode, that we'll provide you with 2 or 3 case studies, and inshallah, if anyone else has any quick questions at the end, then we will take those, and then inshallah we can move on with the rest of the program. So Akbranko, I will give you one scenario. So let's say there's a youth that is looking to get married, and they are struggling to find someone who's going to be their future partner. And they feel that one of the ways they can look at speeding up that process is by changing the way they look. So let's use lip injection, for example. So it doesn't matter whether it's male or female, it doesn't matter. So I want to get married. That is Islamic. I fulfill half of my faith by getting married. And I feel that the ticket to that is getting a lip injection. Islamically, is that allowed or not allowed?
So, if you're asked, I still think you have to go through a process of thinking where you look at jurisprudential, ethical, spiritual, as far as your decision making is concerned. And I would ask this person, male or female, to go through that analysis when they do that, before even talking to an alim. So the jurisprudential answer is going to be very simple. if you're doing a lip enhancement or eyebrows or whatever, Botox, so that you may attract the attention of a non-mahram, then it is not allowed. That's the jurisprudential answer. All right? So, if you think your ticket to getting married is, so that you can enhance your image in a way that attracts a non-mahram and puts them is at risk at putting that person into sin, so he looks at you in a lustful way, as an example, then you can still do the injection, but you should be covering yourself in front of a non-mahram. So it defeats the purpose of the example that you're giving me, right? Because I could say the same thing. You could say to me, well, I have a person, respectfully, I'll take an example of a female. Let's just make it easy, right? So let's say it's a female who says, I really want to get married. I can't get married. I'm a full hijabi. I can't get married. So my ticket to marriage is I can just take off my hijab and show my hair and show how beautiful I am. And that's my ticket to marriage. It's not allowed. You're not even changing your body image here, right? You're doing something that is jurisprudentially not allowed. Now, from an ethical perspective, I think it's important that society, communities, and a community creates an environment where the person who is looking for a partner is looking beyond just the external looks of the person, and is looking at what that person's character is, what their akhlaq is, what their, And I think we don't do enough of that, right? And don't get me wrong, I think looks are really important, right? Shabramante initially married me because of my looks, right? So
Initially.
Initially. Then my body image changed.
How did she say it?
She said I was really good looking. But anyway, so what I'm trying to say is we have to, as a society and as a community, start to really develop that education that you've got to go beyond an external, look.
Yeah, and these are the problems that we face, right? Because jurisprudentially, you might be allowed. Islamically, I'm thinking I want to get married, which is also Islamic. So I'm mixing Islam, but my intention of wanting to do that is to attract attention, which is not allowed. So there, once again, in even a simple scenario like that, there is a lot of gray. So we'll do one more example, and then we'll open it up, and I am conscious of the time as well. So we'll take it one step further. Akbranko kind of already brought it up, but Islamically, once we are married, we also, the spouses want to keep each other happy and also be physically attractive. So if my husband or my wife asks me to get a particular treatment to make me more physically attractive, then is that allowed? Because going back to your scenario, let's just use the lip injection as the example because we already started with that. So let's say a female's husband asks her to get a lip injection done. So Islamically, you're keeping each other happy, which is a good thing and physically attractive. But could also potentially be causing attraction outside as well because I can't hide the lips. So what do I do now, Akbranko?
Well, you can hide the lips, right? So the answer is the same. It's not rocket science, right? The answer is, of course, if the husband asks you to do a procedure, right, to beautify yourself, whatever that procedure may be, number one, is it going to cause more harm than good? Like, is it medically going to cause harm? Then that's forbidden. Number two, will it be done by somebody who's mahram? That's important. And then number three is if you are doing that procedure and your intention is clear that it is for my husband, but if it then attracts attention from a non-mahram, then you should be covering that part of your body, right? Now, I want to say one thing. It's really easy for people to sit down and say, well, it depends on your niyyah. I got to tell you, that is a really complex issue. To just say it depends on your niyyah, I think it's a get out of jail card, right? It's not as easy to just say, oh, it depends on my niyyah. My niyyah is that I'm doing it for this. I am doing it for my husband. I'm doing it for this. Niyyah is complex in these issues, right? Especially when you are doing something that clearly is going to create a body image outside, which may potentially attract non-mahram, may have a good effect on you mentally, as you said, mental health-wise, and it shows, it enhances your mental health, happiness, and so on and so forth. But asking yourself, because if you look at the psychology of body image, and the psychology of body image is really dangerous, because you can get into a situation where people, what's the difference between taking Ozempic and getting on a really serious diet, as an example, right? That can lead to eating disorders and so on and so forth, right? Like, this is not easy, guys, right? So when you're looking, when you have an individual who really is disturbed mentally by their body image and they want to change it, they haven't even really figured it out for themselves. Before you ask them the question, even, what is your niyyah? Are you trying to attack non-mahram? Are you trying to attack society? Are you trying to just, make your husband happy? They haven't figured it out themselves yet. And it's a very difficult question to ask. I can tell you, if a Maulana asks that person a question, who are you doing it for? Well, I'm doing it for my husband. Okay, you're allowed, right? But that may not be, the niyyah. The important issue for us as a community is that if somebody does that, and I see it all the time, right? I see it all the time. Trust me, it happens, right? So what happens is, botox kairiche. Right? Hear this all the time. You know what? You see this woman or this guy, he's gone to Turkey, got a hair transplant. This guy, she's done Botox. Look at how she looks. She's definitely done Botox. How can she do that? What is important for us is that we don't become judgmental in our approach. Because you have no right to understand, even at the basic level, what that person's niyat is. It's just, it's niyat is complicated in this situation. This is not niyat of standing in salat and doing a niyat. It's a very complicated issue because it has so many different factors to it.
Thank you, Akbar Uncle. So we'll have a couple of minutes for any burning questions that anyone may have that we could address before we end the program. Start with the sisters. Any questions from the sisters? Any questions from our brothers? Oh yes, Munir, go ahead. Yes.
Oh, okay. So I'll just repeat your question, if that's okay. Yeah. So the question is that, you know, if I'm taking Ozempic, does it have to be a prescription from your GP? And the second question is that, are there any other medications that can interfere with it? Yeah, those are the two questions. So as Mohammed Hussain said, you need a prescription from a doctor, right? Like in Canada, you need a prescription from a physician. Yeah,
That doesn't matter.
Even if it is not for obesity, you still need a prescription from a physician, right? So the number one drug, like Mohammed Hussain gave you the statistics, right? But if you look at the Hollywood industry or the Bollywood industry, it's the number one drug, Ozempic. Actually, now it's going to be Mounjaro, because Mounjaro shows a lot more. Mounjaro is a good word, for this, right? But Mounjaro shows a lot more weight loss than even Ozempic does, right? As Ali Raza mentioned, right? I think you said it was more like 21% or something like that, right? I've seen people on these drugs lose tons of weight, like really tons of weight, right? Even if you are taking this drug, you know, for that purpose, you would, in Canada, still need a prescription. Now, you can get it off the market in other ways, just like you can get any other drug, but legally, you need a prescription. It is an injection that's taken once a week. People who do Ozempic who want rapid weight loss, and I've had that in brides, you know, who are coming up to their 3 months before their marriage and so on and so forth. Sometimes they take it twice a week, right, to get that real immediate effect, and that can get them into trouble, as I think one of the ladies had asked the question. The second question is, are there drug interactions? There are drug interactions. There is no drug, Munir, that doesn't have drug interactions. Like every drug has drug interactions. Depends on which drug.
drugs?
So, go ahead.
Yeah, so as Akbar Uncle said, there's very few medications that don't have drug interactions. There's some drug interactions that we can predict, and they're very easy to explain. So for example, in the case of Ozempic, because it's lowering blood sugar, any other medications that may have an effect on blood sugar, you wouldn't want to, or like you would want to be very careful about taking them together. But we do use it with other diabetes medications, right? Knowing that that is a drug interaction, right? Or that is the intended effect. But if you inappropriately, you know, like if you use it with a natural health product that decreases your blood sugar, it could be less predictable, especially if you're not monitoring for it, right? And then there's also other drug interactions that you wouldn't kind of be able to predict based on the drug interactions that we're aware of, because now that they've unfolded and we have evidence that they have occurred. So typically as a pharmacist, what I do whenever there's a new prescription for a medication, that's part of the job I have in checking a brand new prescription, in terms of we put it through one of the drug interaction checkers, and there's usually always going to be a number of drug interactions that pop up. And then we have to sift through those drug interactions to determine for a particular patient which one of those are meaningful. So if I see that you're on multiple medications to help with diabetes, then the fact that Ozempic is interacting with metformin is not a concern, because we're doing that intentionally. However, if there's other drug interactions, then we'd go into more detail. The drug interactions can range from mild, where we don't need to take any action, to more moderate, where we monitor to see what's going to happen and make sure no bad effects happen, to more major and severe, which we would avoid altogether. There's also other drug interactions that maybe are like an effect that can be made worse by being on 3 medications that have that same effect. And so, for example, there's certain medications that can affect the rhythm of your heart. It's not a big concern if you're on one medication that has a very tiny effect. That being said, if you add multiple medications, if your potassium is off, if you're female, if you're elderly, there's an accumulation of those risk factors that put you at a greater risk. So as Akbar Uncle said, there's always drug interactions, and that's something that needs to be checked.
Yeah, I just want to say one thing, when it just triggered something for me. One thing is that for the people in the community who are diabetics, I tell you, Ozempic is probably one of the best drugs for you to take in the holy month of Ramadan, because it doesn't drop your sugar to a level that may become hypoglycemic. But I wouldn't advise you to do that unless you really had a very intense conversation with your doctor about it. But there are certain drugs that are safe in the holy month of Ramadan for diabetics, and there are certain drugs that can be problematic. So like there is a group of medications for diabetic, like sulfonylureas, that really drop your blood sugar, and they're more problematic. But right now we have, there is a diabetes and Ramadan group, actually. It's called DAR, Diabetes and Ramadan Group, that have come out with very extensive guidelines around management of diabetes in the holy month of Ramadan. And one of the things that they are recommending is, these newer medications are probably safer for people who want to fast, especially where the fasts are long. But now it won't matter, because inshallah we are moving into a time when fasts are going to be short, so it's not going to be a problem. But that is one of the things that happens. From Dar. No,
Any other questions? All right, brothers and sisters, thank you for coming. Let us end this program with the Surah Fatiha for all of our marhumin. Al-Fatiha.